Can I kick off, Alan?
Yes,
By firstly
Emma.
saying that we need to start having digital in our language in the construction industry. Maybe not talking about just BIM anymore, but actually talking about digital, the digital transition, digital construction, and maybe start to look more towards an all-encompassing industry that looks at the digital transition.
But what does that look like as a physical thing? Is it an entity? What is it? I mean, is it just a movement, or is it something that you can actually touch and feel that's there? A bit like what we have in Cambridge, for example, something that we could point towards. Yes.
I suppose if we look at what is the advantages of digital technology, and who are the benefiters of that? House builders. We have a severe housing shortage.
Can you hear, Pat? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have a housing problem. Yes.
Yeah, we have a severe housing shortage. So in the next, hopefully, within the next year, we can get housing going. How do we drive digital technology within that industry? What are the benefits to the supply chain feeding into contractors building semi-detached houses? How are they going to drive that in terms of the efficiencies? Architectural practices, consultants, all of that, in terms of what are the benefits to each sector that is using digital technology. And I think then we need to look at that and to implement strategies going forward.
Is it a bit like what Bruce was talking about, getting over the threshold, having some really quick wins so that people can see it straight off, as opposed to,
From my point of view, obviously, I represent a client organization that procures major projects. So I represent Transport Infrastructure Ireland. You might not know the organization, my name, but we are responsible for national roads, motorways, and public transport, light rail and metro in particular, in Dublin and Ireland. And from my point of view, I have to say, we are at the beginning of learning on BIM and digital. We have embraced BIM on our two biggest schemes, so we are developing in BIM through our advisors the Dunkettle interchange upgrade, which is a major motorway, and the Metrolink indeed in Dublin. But one point I would like to make, the most important thing for me to bring it above the threshold on all projects is to look at the actual benefits to everybody, including the client. Because in speaking to a number of colleagues around Europe, which I do regularly, one point that we want to make is that the industry tends to implement BIM in ways that suits the industry. So for instance, my colleague, who is an Irish fellow and is in charge of a successful light rail in Manchester, Danny Vaughan from Metrolink, will tell you that they delivered a couple of schemes through BIM, and he has a wonderful BIM model and the data model of the utilities, because that's where the industry decided to use.
Just try and keep the messages short.
Okay,
so
that's
that
fine.
We can get everyone to have.
And
just keep it
generally speaking, it's applied in the way the construction industry suits. So you have wonderful modeling of the utilities, which we don't own, and maybe not so much of the asset we own, because at times we struggle to set up the requirements right. So the important point is getting us help to us to set up the requirements right.
Okay, so short, punchy messages. Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, Stephen, and then maybe Kevin.
Okay, so I suppose for me, in the work that has been done by the MPC in the development of the roadmap, the digitalised roadmap, it would really be about how the industry could come together on both the supply and the demand side, okay, to bring that into a reality, okay. We see in every other country where government and industry have worked together and have brought in place structures that have allowed the embeddedness of digitalisation across the industry. And here, we haven't really gone that journey yet, okay, but yet we have a roadmap to do that.
So, thanks, Stephen. Kevin?
Yeah, just to follow on exactly as Stephen has been saying, that we have the supply, we can meet the supply, we need to create the demand. We have the demand for some large infrastructure projects, but there's a lot of projects where we just don't have a demand. And from a digital perspective, it's down to a design team whether they're going to do a project in a digital format or not, whether they're going to adopt BIM or not. We have a roadmap, and I think it's critical that we implement the roadmap. It's the way to go forward. At the moment, everything has been driven from the private side. We have huge support from Enterprise Ireland, from Stephen, from John Hunt, and we have to acknowledge that, because as a government entity, they really have got behind this the whole way. They were instrumental in developing, getting the National BIM Council formed. And what we need now is the government to get behind the digital roadmap and finance it. We're effectively a year into it, and we haven't started yet.
Thank you, Kevin. And actually coming on to Angus.
Yeah, I'd just like to build on what Kevin has said, because I do believe we are missing that leadership piece from the roadmap that is so well written in the roadmap. And I think it's evident for Transport Infrastructure Ireland, it's evident for other public clients who are looking to national leadership on what are they meant to be actually asking for, what standards are meant to be applied, what classification systems should be applied, and if there aren't any available, then are we going to build our own? Are we going to adopt some from best international practice? Is the UK the right place to look, or do we need to look further afield? And I do feel we are missing that leadership at the moment.
Well, this lady to my right is one of those leaders, I see. So Mary, Dublin City Council, I mean, obviously one of two public sector people here today, so what's the feeling at public sector level? Obviously they have their own challenges.
We have our own challenges, but we, again, we feel the public sector aren't getting as involved as they should. We need a government BIM champion, basically.
That's what you need.
In a nutshell, that's what we need to push the agenda on. Now what's happening is Dublin City Council are BIMing. So we have formed this public BIM group, which is an alliance of public sector people, to try and standardise everything we can while we can, and to try and set protocols and to try and do what we need to do in the interim, but it's interim measures.
That could be someone you could bring from the international community to come in to do some work with us to move forward. It doesn't have to be someone that's already there. So, maybe any questions from the floor? Because I don't want to. Malachy. What we have here is a good senior cross-section of stakeholders in design, construction, state agencies and so on. So, yeah.
I think if we were to take on one problem and see it through, we would get a great advantage. And that problem for me is to take on our incredibly difficult and poor public procurement process. It has been set in a traditional process of poor information feeds and whatever else. We've got experts up here. We've got everything in place, except we don't have a really expert, digitally based public procurement process. So if we had something like that, that's the kind of thing that would bring absolutely amazing improvements to our industry and to our economy.
Well, we acknowledge that. For us in Dublin City Council, our procurement is one of our biggest barriers. So we recognise that we do need a serious overhaul of the public procurement. We need a serious overhaul of the contracts. There are numerous items that are actually holding us up, slowing us down, the same way they do with the private sector. So they need overhauling, but they are major tasks in themselves. So we do need to get the right people together to do it. And it's slow. Again, it affects us in delivery of house building. We're looking going forward.
Is that the biggest challenge?
It's one of the biggest challenges we have going forward. We're looking at doing off-site delivery and volumetrics and integrated project delivery as the fastest way forward, not only for the best results in quality, but also the quickest and the cheapest, as it happens. So, I mean, there's a very, very good case for doing it. We're just not geared for it yet, but we need to get geared up and do it.
Yeah, the people are there, the technologies are there, the processes are there, the materials are there. What's not there is a strong leader to say we need change and we're going to implement change and we're going to have it in 12 months.
Yes, a government BIM champion we need.
Yes.
We have a minister for centralised, a single digital economy.
He was here yesterday.
And this is a central part of a single digital economy. From a procurement perspective, the procurement system is broken. Even traditional ways of procurement are broken, never mind trying to transform that onto a digital platform. There's some brilliant procurement stuff being done by a number of government departments. There's other government departments and what they're doing is absolutely atrocious. and they should be embarrassed about it. We consistently, on behalf of the Association of Consulting Engineers, I know all the other professional bodies as well, would be writing to the Office of Government Procurement and individual contracting authorities on a weekly basis, outlining major flaws in items that are being procured. And that's a fundamental issue. We have to get that fixed. It's not just a digital issue, but it's a fundamental issue. But I suppose we're just borrowing an expression that was used at a previous CitA event a number of years ago. We have an extra vision government for a Netflix age, and that's one of the biggest problems we have.
If I can add to that, I suppose.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rob.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is sell technology. I mean, we want people to use technology, we want to convince them, you know, to use it, but everything has to have a value proposition. You know, so if you don't convince people, or you can't convince people of the value of getting on board on a digital journey or using technology, the rest of it doesn't matter. Because the vast majority of people operating in the construction sector, who are the small to medium-sized contractors, technology just isn't relevant for them. Nobody is offering them a solution that says that this will actually make your life easier. And procurement is one of them, I think, could be tackled, because everybody goes through this horrible procurement process. So if that could be cracked, then you kind of got to convince people with one thing, that this is actually a solution, a technology solution that delivers for you. And then, okay, technology has delivered something for me now. Maybe I can get involved in BIM. But BIM as a starting point, for instance, is way high up there for most people from a commercial, from an expense point of view, every point of view. It's just not relevant to them, it's too expensive. And even though it was mentioned that we need to change the narrative a little bit around BIM and talk about digital construction and everything else, nearly everything we talk about since has been a lot around BIM. So I just think that BIM is great, but it's not the launch pad for construction technology. I think we should start talking about lots more stuff.
And I've referred to as the seed for the digital twin. And World Economic Forum, you know, best minds in the world got together and they see it as the start of the digital transformation. This is not a digital transformation program, it's a transition program. It's 4 years. There should be another 4, 8, 16, 20 years beyond that. So the question is, what do you say to the Government of Ireland? Is the question why over? You know, why should the government intervene and pay for this program? Or should the government not interfere and allow the supply chain to just work it out? That's the big question, isn't it? So you go into, if some of us or some people go in to see this group in 2, 3, 4 weeks' time, you've probably got a minute or 2 minutes to sell it, or you're dead. So what do you say in those few minutes? So, yeah.
Well,
is the why finished, or is it, should be wait?
I can tell you I've worked extensively around Europe over the last 2 years on exactly this issue. And the most positive outcomes have been where governments have shown clear leadership and public organisations have come together and shown clear leadership on what the requirements are that they expect of industry, given industry time to catch up and implement them. Whether you want to call that a mandate or whether you want to call it standardisation, whatever, the best outcomes have been where the government bodies have shown leadership rather than leaving it to everyone to try and find their own route.
Okay.
Alan, if I could
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Why should we do this? Okay. In my world, which is an exporting world, okay, and we have managed with a cohort of companies, or the cohort of companies managed to become sort of, if not European, if not world, certainly European experts in delivery of certain types of buildings, okay? And that was based around technology, it was based around digitalization, and it's based around BIM. And indeed, it was in no short measure, and thanks to people like Shane in a company in West Dublin that brought a cohort of companies together to embed that capability in them. And now we're selling we're delivering major structures right across Europe and indeed beyond now of many, not hundreds of millions, but billions of euro, you know. So that in itself, for me, is a case as to why we should be looking to embed that whole technology, that digitalization, as far across the industry as we can in the first phase. And we accept that there will be people that won't be part of that initial journey, because it's not really in their gambit at this point in time. But you know, if we don't start that journey, we'll never get to the end. and we need to make everybody aware of the relevance and importance that by starting at what it can do for the whole of the industry.
And of course, the whole return on investment that they'll get back.
Not only is the return on investment, it's about productivity, it's about innovation, it's about improvement, it's about actually lifting the whole industry to a level where we can stand up in any jurisdiction, in any country, in any part of the world and say, we have a world-class performing industry where the supply and demand side come together to deliver projects in a coherent way and deliver value for all parts of the society, both the companies, the industry and the citizen.
I think also, I think we need to look at
Thanks, Stephen.
the whole culture change in regards to procurement. You know, I think in regards to collaboration, how our contracts set up, we're very much in an adversarial industry at the moment, where we're shoving risk from one side to the other. You know, if we set up contractual an environment where, you know, it's collaboration, it's true, and then it's going to foster the advantages that digital technology can bring, and pretty much in you know, reinforcing that return and on increased productivity. You know, if we look at, you know, very recently the issue with schools, you know, design and build, you know, the procurement areas around there, is that really true collaboration? You know, look at the I suppose the time and the costs associated with each different stage in regards to that, and look at the risk transfer. You know, is digital technology.
And there's so much that can be showcased about Ireland, say the Advantage Ireland programme, through a programme like this. Example of projects, example of programmes, school initiatives with TOI students, you know, attracting females to the industry, you know, all of that could be through this programme. Okay, any closing comments, just particularly in regard to 2019, very quickly, what is the focus for 2019? If you were advising the Alliance and its partners in 2019, what would you say they should do? So, what's the focus?
I'd say the focus has to be the same as it was in 2018, and it's get the government to implement the plan that it paid for.
But in the interim, there's other things to be done. But yes, I see what you mean. So let's keep focused on that. Okay, any final questions? Yes?
I suppose there's the one thing I think the construction industry needs to be is more open, you know, in sharing information. And at the moment, there's lots of different companies using lots of different technologies out there.
Yeah.
And it's great to come to an event like this because you get a bit of an insight into what people are doing. But I think one thing that CitA could do is bring together or carry out some sort of survey or find out what are people using and make that knowledge available to people to say, you know, here's a suite of technologies that you could use, and maybe some of them, you know, could become more relevant to people because,
okay,
you know.
What we might do is capture some vox pops from that and use that at a certain time. So if you could remain seating, because I feel as if you're on my shoulder and it's you know, you're providing support there. So that's really fantastic. So what I might do is just close out, unless there's any burning questions. Okay. So I just wanted to close out the conference.